Hi, this is Sim Kern, and today we're going to be taking a look at the book Against Erasure, a photographic memory of Palestine before the NAKBA. I want to thank Haymarket Books, the publisher of this book, for sending it to me as a review copy. They'd sent it a couple months ago, and I've just been hanging on to it because I didn't know what to do with it. And I decided to do it in this ASMR style. I think that it's good to reset your nervous system, and if you're an activist, if you've been very involved or paying attention to what's been happening in Palestine the last 6 months, your nerves are probably shot. And if you think it's inappropriate to learn about some history like we're going to do, or focus on Palestine in a way that is soothing to the nervous system, I'd really recommend you read the book Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, which makes the case that in order to be sustainable in the long term and effective, activism needs opportunities to be joyful or even relaxing. So that's what we're doing today. I'm just going to make sure that I'm recording. Yes, I am. Okay. ASMR is so hard, you guys. It took me an hour just to get set up to do this. And then I have a dog and a baby, and I'm really not good at editing. So you're going to hear cars and maybe, loud noises sometimes. I'll do my best to, edit out anything really jarring. The sound may not match up with the video perfectly. It's really hard. Respect all the ASMR artists. I did some ASMR videos a few years ago on analyzing some of Shakespeare's sonnets. I'll link those in the description. But I haven't done anything in years because it's so hard. It takes so much time to make ASMR content. So, okay, we're going to look at this book. We're going to learn some history. I've marked some pages that I think are good. There's my baby. Okay, we're going to pause here. We'll come back. I'm back. Okay. So yeah, it's hard to do this with a baby. Let's get into the book. Okay, no more intro. So the first thing I wanted to show you was that this book was published in 2016 by Haymarket Books, but it's been re-released in 2024. Now, this was a planned re-release. The foreword to the 2024 edition was written by Muhammad Al-Kurd, and it was clearly written before October 7th. But they added this note I'm going to read to you to the beginning of the book. In these dark days of November 2023, while the final touches are being made to this edition, we're witnessing with horror, powerlessness, and anguish a new Palestinian NAKBA. Israel is mercilessly bombing the population of Gaza and forcing the eviction of more than 1 million Gazans in a new ethnic cleansing operation similar to that of 1948, and we'll see some pictures from that later on. As we write these lines, the number of civilians and children killed has entered the tens of thousands. All of this before the eyes of the world and the shameful passivity of the international community. Meanwhile, the assault on the population of the West Bank at the hands of settlers and the occupation army is intensifying. In these dark days, more than ever, Palestine is on our hearts and minds. In these dark days, we dedicate this book to the people of Palestine, friends and strangers, always human. You'll notice that at the end of sections in the book, there's a key. And if you know something about Palestinian history, the key is very symbolic because many Palestinians forced from their homes during the NAKBA still hang on to the keys to their ancestral homes that they took with them when they were forced to leave. Then there's this poem by Fadwa Tukan. And I'm really sorry for my Arabic pronunciation is not great, to say the least. So apologize in advance. Enough for me. Enough for me to die on her earth, be buried in her, to melt and vanish in her soil, then sprout forth as a flower, played with by a child from my country. Enough for me to remain in my country's embrace, to be in her close as a handful of dust, a sprig of grass, a flower. And Fadwa was born in 1914 in Nablus, where she lived until her death in 2003. Then there's this foreword. This is by Muhammad Al-Kurd, who's a great activist and journalist, a young guy living in Palestine. And I thought this was really interesting. He talks about how, like, he also did the Arabic foreword. All the English front matter is in Arabic here at the back of the book. And it's clearly not a direct translation, because he talks about how in English he feels like he has to justify, give all these facts, give all this context, whereas when he's talking in Arabic about Palestine, there's so much that's understood that he doesn't have to explain. Let's see. So there's the original foreword. There's some notes on like how they gathered the photographs. There's history here. If you don't know the history captured in this book, there's like a quick overview that's really helpful of what you need to know to kind of make sense of these pictures, how they got the pictures. Then there's the list of the 418 Palestinian villages destroyed in the NAKBA between 1948 and 1949. And I was just struck by looking at all of these villages in the Safed district. I just wrote, I'm an author, if you don't know. I just wrote a book of historical fiction that I'm on sub with right now, set in the 17th century. And there's, it's not set in, but there's some discussion of Safed where Jews fleeing the Spanish Inquisition, they were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula, hundreds of thousands, and many of them settled in Palestine, where they were welcomed with open arms, and they became Palestinian Jews, and they lived alongside Muslims and Christians there, and Druze and Bedouin, and as we'll see, there's a great diversity of people and faiths in Palestine. And in the time period I was writing about, and I was mentioning the fathers of Kabbalism, Isaac Luria and Chaim Vital. They were rabbis that lived in Safed. They created this Jewish mysticism practice, and they found refuge there, and became Palestinians. I think they'd be horrified at what has happened subsequently. Okay. Let's get to the photographs. Then we get to the photographs here, right? We've got initially some photographs of olive oil, different industries that were important in Palestine. There are, here we have citrus groves and grapes. Some information on agricultural production, fishing. I wanted to show you this picture. Here, mark this one. Here's a picture. Feast of the Prophet Reuben in southern Palestine. Pilgrims on their way to visit the prophet's grave, riding on camels, 6 women and children, camping equipment. This is between 1920 and 1933. Can you imagine a family road trip on a camel like this? I feel bad for the poor camel. Look how strong it is to carry all those people and their stuff and their camping equipment. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine. I thought that was really cool. Okay, let's see what else we got. Here's some woman making textiles using a loom. This is a women's union workshop in Ramallah between 1934 and 1939. You'll notice that the women, like pre-NAKBA, are in this book are mostly in Western dress. There's a section where they're not, but I think that there's a lot of this book is like just by its existence, it challenges a lot of Israeli propaganda, right? And some of that propaganda is that these were just such backward people, or the women were so oppressed, that they still say women in Palestine are so oppressed, and that's just bullshit. They also say that there was no such thing as Palestine. They say that Palestine was invented. This is Israeli propaganda. They say Palestine was like invented in the 60s. That's bullshit. You can see here clearly government of Palestine on this. I think this is an ambulance. These are nurses. And this is before the NAKBA. This is in the 1930s. Palestine as a country, Palestine as a place within an ethnic national identity, not in terms of like a nation state the way Western imperial powers define it, but as people with a unique, culture. Palestinians are one of the most ancient peoples on earth, and there's just tons of evidence of that. So, I also wanted to show you these pictures of hospitals in 1944, so shortly before the NAKBA. And of course, these hospitals would have been probably not destroyed, but just like taken over and stolen by Israeli forces, I imagine. This was the women's ward and the men's dormitory. And the medical staff. These next few pages show, the diversity of Palestine, which I think is, another lie put out by the Zionist state, is that Palestinians are all Muslims. They want to conflate the two. Well, that's not true. Palestine was really, really diverse. There were a lot of Palestinian Jews. I'm Jewish, by the way. I don't know if I said that. But I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. So look, here's a Bedouin man. So Bedouins are kind of like, if you don't know, like nomadic peoples. And Israel and early Zionists tried to say that like all Palestinians were nomadic and therefore like not deserving of keeping their land, which is also bullshit. Even if they were all Bedouins, like Bedouins respect the land even though they have a nomadic lifestyle. But that's definitely a Western idea that like you can't really, own the land according to them, unless you like stay in one place and like cultivate crops that they recognize. Here's some Armenian, a church leader and a patriarch. Here we have more Bedouins. Get to some more. Here we go. Some different women. Oh yeah, I love this. This is showing like a diversity of different like traditional women's garb in different parts of Palestine. So this one's from Ramallah, carrying a pitcher. This is 1898 to 1920, somewhere in there. I wanted to especially show you this picture. I love this picture. So many of the portraits in this collection are posed, because like having a camera back then was like a big deal. But this one feels very candid to me. It's 3 Bethlehem women sitting, smoking hookah and drinking coffee in a private residence, 1898 to 1914. Doesn't it seem like, look at their facial expressions. They look so over it. And they look like they're sharing the hot goss, and just like, these are 3 friends. They've been friends forever. They're spilling the tea, literally and figuratively. Maybe like one of their husbands came in with this camera and was like so excited about it and was like, I'm gonna take a picture. And she can't even be bothered to look at the frame. I just love the intensity of their expressions, and I love the Bethlehem style of like headgear. I'm sorry, I don't know the word for it, but I love this like tall silhouette It's so bold and daring and stunning, and I think it's really cool. And there's another, on this page, there's another Bethlehem family portrait, and you see those really cool silhouettes. Okay. Oh yeah, here's some more pictures showing like the diversity of faiths in Palestine. So Franciscan monks, again, they're Palestinian Christians. So Coptic monks. I don't really know what Coptic is. I'm realizing I don't know how to explain it. It's a kind of Christian, I think. I think it's a kind of Christian. Then you have Greek Orthodox, and then monks again. And these are some Druze women. So Druze is another like I think it's like a religious / ethnic group, you know. So they have their own religion. It's not Christian. It's not Muslim. It's like its own thing, and it's also like an ethnicity, like a shared culture, I think. Okay. Let's see what's next. I was gonna show you. Oh yeah, you'll notice like the family portraits. It's like clear that people are like probably well-off families, and that was something Muhammad Al-Kurd said in the foreword, was like, bear in mind that like access to cameras was pretty limited at this time, so like you're seeing the people who had access to cameras, right? So there's a lot of Palestinian culture that was never captured on film before the NAKBA, and like that's important to recognize. Okay, skipping ahead, I just thought it was important to look at this like infrastructure. So there were railway lines going all over the country. It was really easy to access all the different parts of the country and for Palestinians to go from place to place at this time on the rails. And Israel has now like totally sectioned off and divided the country with walls, with freeways that are ecologically very destructive, that make it, you know, two Palestinian villages we used to be able to walk from one to the other. Now it's like it takes hours and hours of driving to get around the walls and checkpoints and freeways that have been put between them to carve the country up into spaces for settlers and spaces for Palestinians, which has been really devastating to the ecology, the local environment, and of course, you know, disenfranchises all the Palestinian people and their connection to the land. A really great book about that is Palestinian Walks by Raja Shahada. That's one of my favorite books I've ever read. And of course, train railways, you know, were so much more environmentally sustainable to have public transportation rather than freeways. Okay, let's keep going. What was the next thing I flagged? Okay, so this is when the Balfour Declaration, after the Balfour Declaration, there were protests. So the Balfour Declaration in 1917 was Great Britain saying, this guy in Great Britain, Alfred Balfour, who was, by the way, a horrible anti-Semite. He hated Jews. He didn't want them in England. He wanted them to settle instead in Palestine so that they would leave Europe. And Balfour Declaration said that basically the UK supported the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And it didn't mention Palestinians at all. And so these were different protests, black flags appearing. This is British troops taking to the streets in response to riots, I think, in 1931. Because once the Balfour Declaration happened, you started seeing a ton of Jewish immigration to Palestine, and there were like terroristic groups, like similar to like the KKK in the U.S., like terrorizing Palestinian people. And so in the 1930s and 1940s, it started to get like just more and more violent, and Palestinians were like being shut out of more and more of their country. The very serious and growing unrest among the Palestinians arises from their absolute conviction that the present policy of the British government, so under the Balfour Declaration, is directed towards evicting them from their country in order to make it a national state for immigrant Jews. The Balfour Declaration was made without our being consulted, meaning the Palestinians, and we cannot accept it as deciding our destinies. This was a letter to Winston Churchill from the Arab delegation that traveled to London to oppose the inclusion of the Balfour Declaration. And if I'm remembering right from the book by Rashid Khalidi, The 100 Years War in Palestine, I think this is a letter, they weren't even, like, Winston Churchill wouldn't even fucking meet with them, okay? They was like, oh, they're from Palestine, that's not a real country, I don't have to meet with them. Fucking asshole. Anyways. That's a really good book, by the way. I have a whole series summarizing every chapter of it on my channel. If you want, there's a video where I talk about every single chapter. Some of the book was a little bit messed up. That's okay. I'm not mad at Haymarket. They sent it to me for free. Okay, this is more of like the revolts that happened in 1936 to 1937. So Palestinians were really facing a lot of like economic sanctions, Jewish immigration, like Jews were coming by like the tens of thousands and shutting them out of their country. They had the backing of the British Army, and you know, Palestinians were getting the sense more and more like we're going to lose our homes. So this is the inhabitants of Abu Ghosh, a town west of Jerusalem, taking an oath of allegiance to the Arab Higher Committee in April 1936. And then here, in what is tragically very, you know, familiar pictures of what Zionism does. These were houses blown up with dynamite in Jaffa during the Arab protests in the summer of 1936. These Arab homes were destroyed by the British military during the revolt. And another familiar scene, inhabitants searching for their belongings in the rubble of their home in Lid. This is demolished houses in Halhul in southern Palestine. This was, something else is like, I mean, Palestinians really, when you look back at the last 100 years of history, like if you read Rashid Khaledi's book, you'll see that Palestinians have really tried every single means of protest and resistance, and most of it nonviolent. So there was a major general strike from 1936 to 1937, which was really effective. It caused almost total economic and commercial paralysis throughout Palestine. And if I'm remembering right from Khaledi's book, it was kind of undercut very sneakily by the British. So the British kind of convinced, it was working really well, but the Brits convinced some crucial Palestinian leaders to call for an end to the strike, to undermine it, and they did that a lot. Yeah, they did that a lot. I thought this was cool too. Another form of protest, just like putting giant boulders so that the highways, you couldn't use them, right? Okay. Oh, I think this is important. So this is a page all about the role of Palestinian women in the resistance in this time period. Palestinian women have always been central to their struggle. Central leadership roles. So Palestinian women took an active part in the protests during the British Mandate. In this photograph, a delegation of Palestinian women are pictured in front of the High Commissioner's residence in Jerusalem. The delegation came together to protest British brutality during the riots of 1929. And then over here, we have, this was the Palestinian delegation departing from Lid to participate in the first Conference of Arab Women in Cairo, which took place on October 15th through 18th. And the central theme of the conference was support for Palestine. It supported the Palestinian Revolution, that was at 1936-37, the riots, the strike, all of that was part of the revolution. Called for a boycott of British products, supported Palestinian demands for the cancellation of the Balfour Declaration, the halting of Jewish immigration, and the cessation of the illegal transfer of Arab lands to Jews. Zionist Jews at this time were like, one, they would like buy huge tracts of Palestine from people, like rich people who owned it who weren't Palestinian. So because, like, even before the British, Palestine was under control of the Ottoman Empire. There were like Turkish millionaires, you know, who like owned huge parts of Palestine. They didn't care about the land. And even though there were Palestinian people everywhere living on this land, farming it, you know, whatever, it like officially, according to the Western world, belonged to some millionaire who like never even went there. And the Zionists were like buying up the country from these foreign wealthy people who were not Palestinian. And also they would just like steal it like they do now. They would just like straight up like move into a village, move into somebody's house, you know, take it by force, take it at gunpoint. How did we lose our way so badly? What was I coming here? Oh, just education. Yeah, I put on this page because this is another sort of like thing I don't think people realize, you know, is really propaganda paints Palestinian people again as like backwards, uneducated. But and here's some like data on how many schools there were in Palestine. But I just want to mention that like now Palestinians are some of the most educated people in the world. Gaza has some of the highest literacy rates of anywhere in the world. Extremely educated, a country of intellectuals and poets. And yeah, anyways, it's just important to counteract that. Much, much higher literacy rates than in the United States of America. Oh, yeah, just, you know, here's like Palestinians doing something that a lot of people in the U.S. were doing last weekend, which is taking portraits of their kids on Palm Sunday. And these are clearly Christians, but wearing, you know, a traditional Palestinian tobe. I think that's a tobe. You know, traditional clothing mixed with Western clothing. I like this wedding picture too. I like her really piercing eyes and kind of Clairbow lipstick look. I think they look really great. Okay, what's next? Here we have a soccer team. Palestinian soccer teams. And here we have, you know, some of the resistance. Again, 1936, 1939 was a revolt. Palestinians were, they'd been facing sort of armed vigilante, terroristic violence from Zionist settlers, armed paramilitary Zionist groups. They were defending their homes. They had right to be worried. Clearly, history has borne that out. This was cool. I like this picture of a child on a rooftop in Haifa in the 1940s. Look how dapper he is. This was cool. This is a postcard featuring a photograph by Karima Aboud titled Two Girls from Nazareth, 1928. She was the first female Palestinian professional photographer. You can see on the back of the postcard it says Karima Aboud, lady photographer. I think that's cool. 1928. Okay, what's next? So I'm playing the oud, this big beautiful lute. I like these pictures. I was just like enjoying life in the park. A picnic on Mount Carmel in Haifa in 1942. You just look happy, having a good time, enjoying like a patio moment. This was an outdoor restaurant in Haifa in 1942. Some boating. Fun on boats. Okay, now we are getting to the NAKBA. So this was Haifa after the Israeli assault. And you can see, you kind of have to look closely. I don't know if you can see it from there, but like a lot of the buildings were demolished by Israeli forces. And here are some photographs from the NAKBA, 1948 to 1949. Here girls are pushing their belongings in strollers and wheelbarrows fleeing Jaffa. Here, caravan of refugees and their belongings fleeing from Gaza to Hebron, I think that's how you say it, in the West Bank. Here you see Palestinian refugees initially displaced to the Gaza Beach refugee camp and their boarding boats to Lebanon and Egypt in 1949. Here's the Nar al-Bared refugee camp in Lebanon. It was one of the first to be set up as part of the emergency measures. And here you see UNRWA has been distributing food aid to Palestine ever since the 1950s. So, you know, the fact that it was shut down because the Israel propaganda lied and said they were Hamas is just outrageous. At first, the refugee camps were structured according to places of origin in Palestine, with the lives of its inhabitants revolving around the memory of their city, their village, their lost homes, and above all, around returning to Palestine. Later, nostalgia gave way to a strong sense of national identity. It is in the refugee camps where Palestinians, traumatized and torn apart by the NAKBA, find the strength to rebuild, and where identity became a Palestinian cause. That is, a national liberation movement. This is some scenes from the refugee camps. In Gaza Beach camp, they did not have running water in the 1950s, so this is in 1953. Women are carrying water on their heads. Keys to new concrete shelters in the Aida refugee camp near Bethlehem, 1950. And here's a preschool, one of the first preschool classes in the Tikwana refugee camp in Lebanon. Again, you know, Palestinians, despite everything they've been through, their culture clearly prioritizes education. Yep. That's why they make such formidable writers. Girls playing basketball at the Center for Women's Activities in Kalandia, West Bank, 1950s. And that's, of course, the cover of the book. I guess we'll close out with this poem at the end. This is by Mahmoud Darwish, who is probably the most well-known, at least in English translation, of Palestinian poets. He was the first Palestinian poet I ever read. He was born in Al-Birwa, Galilee, 1941. He lived till 2008. This is from, unfortunately, it was Paradise, Selected Poems. It was translated by Amira El-Zain, Carolyn Forche, Munira Akash, Sinan Antun. On this earth, we have on this earth what makes life worth living. April's hesitation, the aroma of bread at dawn, a woman's point of view about men, the works of Aeschylus, the beginning of love, grass on a stone, mothers living on a flute sigh, and the invader's fear of memories. We have on this earth what makes life worth living. The final days of September, a woman keeping her apricots ripe after 40, the hour of sunlight in prison, a cloud reflecting a swarm of creatures, the people's applause for those who face death with a smile, a tyrant's fear of songs. We have on this earth what makes life worth living. On this earth, the Lady of Earth, mother of all beginnings and ends. She was called Palestine. Her name later became Palestine. My lady, because you are my lady, I deserve life. And then here is all the front matter in Arabic in reverse. So that's the book. Against Erasure, a photographic memory of Palestine before the NAKBA. There's a lot of pages that I didn't show you, So you can check this book out from Haymarket Books and see all of them and remember. And I'm sure people are working on something similar about Gaza before this horrible war and the destruction. It's really important to remember, to catalog and preserve history, because otherwise it will be erased by the oppressors. God, and I love that line. Why did I shut it? I want to go back to it. Hold on. God, I love that line in Darwish's poem about how one of the things that make life worth living is the invader's fear of memories and the tyrant's fear of songs. Boy, isn't that the case? Maybe tyrants are afraid of ASMR too. I don't know. When it's about Palestine, maybe. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. I hope the audio was okay. I'm not amazing at making ASMR, but hopefully this was enjoyable. Maybe I'll make more in the future. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the book, which pictures were your favorite. Commenting, helps the algorithm. My YouTube channel is still like kind of, I don't know, it never really took off like my other content. So yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments what you thought of this book, of this video, of this format. Do you want me to do more stuff like this?